Hi, my name is Ben, physical therapist here at Total Physical Therapy, and today we're going to be continuing going through the activity guidelines for Americans, specifically looking at strength training and why it is important for us to perform these activities. If you are new to strength training and you're wanting to learn all the basics about how to strength train and what to do, stick all the way through to the end of this video, because by the end, you should be able to walk away from this video and have all the tools that you need to be able to start a strength training program. In the previous video, we went through the importance of aerobic activity and how it can provide a plethora of health benefits for us as we perform that activity. And the activity guidelines also recognize how important aerobic activity is by giving it a total of 4 pages of information about what aerobic activity is and how to perform it and what it looks like to do that activity. When it comes to strength training, however, the activity guidelines give strength training 4 paragraphs of information as opposed to 4 pages with aerobic activity. Now, that's not to say that strength training is not important. It's just that they didn't provide near as much information about this style of training as they did aerobic activity. Now, the activity guidelines do say that there are some additional benefits that you can get from strength training that is unique to strength training that you don't get to see as much in aerobic activity. A couple of these are things like strengthening your bones, improving your muscular fitness, and also being able to retain muscle mass even as you are losing weight. Now, if you have been listening to this channel for any length of time, you've probably heard me give my reason for why I strength train, which is to be able to be functional in my environment. For example, my wife is a harpist and her harp weighs about 83 pounds. Now, normally I put that harp on a dolly and we dolly that thing around so I don't have to pick it up per se, but once, maybe twice a year, there's a stage that we have to get that harp onto, and the stairs are way too big to be able to dolly that harp up. And so whenever my wife looks at me and says, "Hey, would you be able to get this harp up on the stage?" I have to be prepared for that. And that's why I strength train, or one of the reasons why I strength train, is so that I know that when my wife asks me, "Will you be able to get this harp up onto the stage?" I can answer her with confidence saying, yes, I know that I personally lift weights that are as heavy or a little bit heavier than her harp, and so her harp will feel relatively light to me compared to what I am doing in my training. And everybody has their unique story of things that you have to interact with. And so whenever you are performing strength training, you get to decide what types of weights you lift and how you lift in order to prepare you for those specific activity demands. Strength training works by providing what we call overload, which is basically using either weights or your body weight in a way that is more work than you are accustomed to doing. And by doing this, your body recognizes that it will need to change. And one thing that most people don't recognize that happens when we are strength training is that I actually don't get stronger when I strength train. Whenever I'm doing my strength training, I'm actually making myself tired, not stronger, which is why it is important to make sure that when we are strength training, that after we are done strength training, we do a very good job on recovering. We need to be doing things like getting good amounts of sleep, drinking lots of water, eating healthy food, and managing our stress appropriately. If I'm doing those 4 things well, then my body will be able to adjust and get as strong as possible in regards to that strength training. One question that normally pops up with strength training is how often do I need to strength train? And the answer to this question is a little bit nuanced, but a very basic way to understand this is that you need to make sure that you need to give yourself enough time after you make yourself tired to recover before you strength train again, or at least strength train the same or similar muscles. And so a good rule of thumb is that you need at least 1 day of rest in between the times that you strength train. Now, the activity guidelines recommend that you strength train at least twice a week, and I would agree. Strength training twice a week, appropriate amount of strength training twice a week is plenty and ample amount of stimulus in order to improve your strength. That will allow you to be able to get tired, have enough time to recover, and then get tired again, have enough time to recover, and then get tired again. Now, when it comes to actually deciding what exercises to do, the activity guidelines don't give us much guidance on what specific exercises to actually do. Instead, what they say is that you need to be working the majority of the major muscles in your body, things like your arms, your legs, your back, your abdomen. And that's basically the guidance that they give you. And if you're somebody who's never really strength trained before, you look at that list and you kind of go, well, how do I work my arms? What types of things can I do to be able to work my arms? And this is where I default to a system that is a very simple system. And I first heard it from a coach named Dan John. And I really like this system because the system is very simple and allows you to be able to understand what you're doing and allows you to have a little bit of variety in your training. The system is basically, when you're exercising, you pick one pushing exercise, one pulling exercise, one squatting exercise, one hinging exercise, and one carrying exercise. For a pushing exercise, I can take weight and I can push weight overhead, or I could take weight and I could push weight in front of me. For pulling exercises, I could take weight and pull it towards me in a horizontal plane. I could take weight and I could pull it down in a vertical plane. For a squatting exercise, I could squat just like I would normally squat, like I'm going down to like sit in a chair and then stand back up. Or I could do things like lunges. For hinging exercises, I could do things like bending down and picking weight up off the floor, which is traditionally called a deadlift. Or I could do even body weight versions of a hip hinge, which are things called bridges. And for carrying, there's a variety of different types of carries. One simple version of this is what we call a suitcase carry, where I hold a weight down by my side. Or maybe I do a farmer's carry, where I hold weight down by my side and I hold with two hands. What I like about this system is that when you go to the gym, you only have 5 exercises that you really need to be working on in order to improve your whole body strength. And when you show up to the gym, you can pick one version of a push that you like, one version of a pull, one version of a squat, one version of a hinge, and one version of a carry. For example, I could go to the gym and I could do an overhead press for my push. I could do a vertical pull down or a lat pull down for my pull. I could do a goblet squat for my squat. I could do a deadlift for my hinge, and I could do a suitcase carry for my carry. And I go through and do those exercises, and when I'm done with those exercises, I can be done with my strength training. And you'd be surprised at how little time it takes to do 5 exercises. If you were to do those 5 exercises in sequence, it should take you roughly anywhere from about 20 to maybe 30 minutes at most. Well, the next question should be, how much of each exercise should I be doing? And in the guidelines, they recommend doing at least one set of 8 to 12 repetitions. What that means is I pick up a weight and I do it, and I do that movement 8 to 12 times, and that is one set. And they say doing 2 or 3 of those sets is probably better. And I would agree. Typically when I am programming for somebody, I'm typically programming in 2 or 3 sets. And by doing this, we are getting much more benefit from the strength training as opposed to just one set. However, if you're a beginner and you don't have much time, one set is adequate in order to improve your strength. And then the next question would be, how heavy should the weight be? And what is recommended by the activity guidelines is that when you are performing a set, say you're going to be doing a set of 10 of overhead presses. As you are doing the set of overhead presses, by the time you do 9 or 10 you get to the 9th or 10th rep of pushing that weight overhead, it should be getting very challenging to the point where you are thinking, I don't know if I could do another rep. And this is a term that most people would call going to failure. And there are basically 2 different types of failure that we could approach whenever we're doing strength training. One is what most people would understand, which we would call absolute failure, which basically means I am lifting a weight until I literally cannot lift it up anymore. I am pushing that weight until I get so tired that I literally cannot push it up. That would be termed absolute failure. There's another type of failure called technical failure. Technical failure is a little bit more nuanced, but basically, as you are lifting a weight, you're going to be going at a certain speed. And then as you start getting tired, you're going to start noticing that the speed or the technique that you use will start to change. Whenever your technique or the way that you were moving the weight starts changing, that is called technical failure. And typically, whenever you start reaching technical failure, you are going to only be able to do maybe 2 or 3 more reps after that, and you're going to have to do them in a kind of a weird way in order to get that weight back up. And so for most people, I recommend, especially beginners, that you go to technical failure, which is much more safe than going to absolute failure. Now, the last thing that we need to talk about is the idea of progression. It is nice to be able to know what exercises to do and how to do them. However, it's not enough just to know how to do that. We need to know how to gradually improve or increase our weight over time. And one simple idea that we can use in order to improve our weight over time is an idea we call double progression. Basically, there are 2 variables, which is why we call it double, 2 variables that we can play with. We can play with how many reps of each exercise that we can do, and we can also play with the weight of the exercise. And so the idea is this: we set up a rep range that you can work with that exercise within. So the activity guidelines recommend a rep range between 8 and 12 repetitions, which I think is actually a very good rep range for most people generally. And so the idea would be that whatever weight you pick that is somewhat challenging for you, you need to be able to do that at least 8 times. Now, as you get stronger over a period of weeks, you're going to start noticing that 3 sets of 8 is going to start getting a little easy for you. Well, your goal is to gradually work and graduate your way up to where you can tolerate 3 sets of 12 with whatever movement that you are trying to do. So for example, one day you go to the gym, you do overhead presses 3 sets of 8 with say 15 pounds, and you realize that was fairly comfortable. Well, next time you show up, try to do 3 sets of 9. If that was fairly comfortable, do 3 sets of 10, and so on until you get to 3 sets of 12. Now, if you show up and you're doing 3 sets of 10 and that is very challenging and you don't feel like you could go to 3 sets of 11, no big deal. Stay at 3 sets of 10. Now, as you work your way up through the rep range and you get to 3 sets of 12 and that starts feeling fairly comfortable for you, you have the green light to go up in weight. So the way this would look is, instead of doing 3 sets of 12 with a 15 pound of pushing it overhead, I would then go to say 3 sets of 8 with a 20 pound weight pushing it up overhead. I'm increasing the weight, but then I jump back down to the bottom of that rep range. And then the idea is, again, I'm gradually working and getting comfortable going through that rep range again to where I can do 3 sets of 12 with my 20 pound weight. Once I feel comfortable doing 3 sets of 12 with a 20 pound weight, I have the green light to go up in my resistance again. So I can go up to a 25 pound weight and I will jump down to 3 sets of 8. And I can work through this cycle for a period of time. For most people, this will be sufficient to get you sufficiently strong for whatever functional goals you might have. If your goal is to be in Mr. Olympia, this system does not work for you. It will work for a lot of beginners, but it won't work for intermediate to advanced lifters. However, if you're a beginner and just looking to be very functional, this idea is very, very good for you. So let's try to make this very practical. Whenever I walk into the gym, I can basically have 2 different days that I go into the gym. On Monday, I can go into the gym and I can do 3 sets of my overhead press. I can do 3 sets of a vertical pull down. I can do 3 sets of a goblet squat. I can do 3 sets of a deadlift, and I can do 3 sets of walking in a suitcase carry for about 30 seconds. I can give myself a couple of days of rest, and on Thursday, I show up back at the gym, and I can do 3 sets of a bench press, 3 sets of a row, 3 sets of lunges, 3 sets of bridges, and 3 sets of a farmer's carry. And what you'll notice is that on day 1, I had all 5 of those exercises in there. And then on day 2, I had a different set of 5 exercises, but kind of working the same idea. We're working a push, a pull, a squat, a hinge, and a carry. And by doing this, you get a little bit of variety. So you get to keep it a little bit fresh. You're not doing the same thing every time. And as you work at this, you should be able to work on progressing the weights appropriately, as we talked about previously in this video. Well, that's it. That's a video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that you guys had all of your questions answered on what is strength training, how does it work for me, and what types of things do I need to do, and how can I implement it whenever I go into the gym. Now, you don't even have to go into the gym. For a lot of these movements, you can actually do them at home, and you are welcome to do so. If you guys have any comments or questions, leave those in the comment section below. If you guys like the video, give us a thumbs up. And as always, I hope you guys have a great day.